Hello YouTube, I'm Elwirfy, and today we're going to be talking about a recent update that happened with Wizards of the Coast. There's a lot more detailed videos on this subject, but I wanted to get down to the main core of how the Wizards of the Coast change affects content creators. To me, that's the angle I want to try and focus on. You see, Dungeons & Dragons has been around for a very, very long time. I think since the... Actually, I'm not going to say because I don't know off the top of my head. But it's been around for a long time. My dad's played it before. It's very old. However, one of the best things about Dungeons and Dragons is the fact that once you get your rules and you get your system to play, you essentially can do whatever you want. You can make up whatever you want. Sure, you might have some ideas for how to roll the dice, how to make stuff a little more engaging. If you've seen, I've even actually done my own D&D campaigns before, even though they didn't pan out too far just due to people's schedules, and it's really hard to get a session of D&D together, to be honest, especially something that's going to be consistent. However, it still was a lot of fun to do, and I loved being the dungeon master and making my own games. Wizards of the Coast has decided to go ahead and say, you know what, we don't want that anymore. We're going to just tell you, you got to get a license or something along those lines. They haven't worked out the details themselves yet, but essentially they're going to try and take shares of the revenue that are earned from people who make content on Dungeons and Dragons, which is super disappointing because that's ridiculous. Because in my eyes, as soon as you make something that is your own idea, you're no longer beholden to the other people. For example, let's say instead of Dungeons & Dragons content, I'm just going to use GURPS. GURPS is another wonderful role-playing system which allows you to use the same stats, and it feels like D&D, but it's not Dungeons & Dragons. I bet you, my prediction is that we're going to see GURPS take over a lot more games. Now, what's interesting is that you see people like Critical Role, where they make about $10 million in the last year that they were doing streaming on Twitch for Dungeons & Dragons. And it really sucks that it seems like, I mean, I don't know how it would work exactly, but essentially they're going to maybe partner with Twitch, perhaps, to force some of the revenue that they would that the Critical Role would earn to go to them. It just seems really vague as to how they would actually be able to do this. On YouTube, it's much easier for them. They could just copyright strike any video they want, essentially, and suck up all the money for themselves. I wouldn't even be surprised if someday my Dungeons & Dragons videos, even though it shows nothing and is completely unique to my own world and setting, I wouldn't be surprised if those get copyright strike just because it says Dungeons & Dragons in the title. Heck, I might even change the title of the video after I make this video. We'll see how it goes. There's a lot of details still being worked out. But I'm honestly just really curious if... Are the rights of content creators being creative not being protective correctly? Because I would hope that YouTube and Twitch both are going to be able to see that every single Dungeons & Dragons game is completely homebrew and unique. I mean, unless someone's making content that says, okay, we're specifically in this world using these D&D maps, and we're doing these exact things that are set in the setting. But even then, everything's still made up. It's still all about the players, because the players ultimately drive your game when you're making a D&D campaign. So, I don't know. I just can't imagine that they could really enforce this that well. So I'm not freaking out too much, but I thought it was important to bring it to the attention of especially small content creators like myself who might be interested in maybe doing Dungeons & Dragons later down the line. Sure, it is possible that nothing's going to happen, and there's nothing to worry about, and I'm jumping the gun on here. But seriously, if they partner with Twitch and YouTube and they're like, hey, anything that says D&D in it or anything roleplay, RPG kind of stuff, we want some revenue share. That seems really messed up because Dungeons & Dragons isn't really making their own content. I mean, yeah, they have a little bit, but to be honest, they don't really provide a whole lot. It's the players and the dungeon masters who are actually making the Dungeons & Dragons content that are making enjoyable experiences for viewers to watch, for people who maybe aren't able to get together with groups and have fun. I really like Dungeons & Dragons. I played it a lot when I was in high school, working in my first job. And I made a lot of good friends through doing Dungeons & Dragons and really got kind of my own persona put into this role-playing space that I didn't think I'd ever have access to before. It's a really wonderful thing, actually, when a good D&D group is able to work together and make something truly special. So, honestly, I think that Wizards of the Coast is being stupid, and if they really try and get money off of all these people making Dungeons & Dragons stuff, two things are going to happen. One, people are just going to stop making Dungeons & Dragons content. That seems unlikely, but I think that's what's going to happen. More likely, number two, they're going to essentially not call it Dungeons and Dragons anymore. They'll use GURPS. They'll use some other system of role playing. You could do like there's a Star Wars one. There's Battlestar Galactica. There's all kinds of rule sets you could do. It's just that Dungeons and Dragons, the fantasy setting, happens to be the most popular. Everyone knows about it. The word Dungeons and Dragons, people instantly know what you're talking about. So it would suck to kind of lose that title, but I'm honestly not thinking Dungeons and Dragons style of games, or I guess I should stop saying that now, right? We want to say RPGs, role-playing games, are going to be shifting, probably, in my eyes, to another system. Or they'll be relabeling it, or people just make up their own stuff. Heck, you don't even have to technically roll a d20. You could roll d8s, d10s, and it's just a dice. They're just dice. It's just a number counter, a number randomized thing, you know? So tell me what you think about this whole Wizards of the Coast attack on our games that they kind of have no right to attack on. It seems kind of silly and stupid, but hey, maybe I'm in the wrong too. Maybe I'm missing something. But from what I can tell, I read the post that Wizards of the Coast made about this stuff, and I think they have really no grounds unless the streaming and YouTube communities decide to side with Wizards of the Coast instead of protecting its content creators. And honestly, I could see them doing that as well, just because, well, you know, it's not as if the hosts for, you know, content creation really care about the small little guys, especially small YouTubers like us. So let me know your thoughts. I had a ton of fun updating everyone, and hopefully things will be okay for the Dungeons and Dragons scene. As always, guys, I'm Elwirfy, and I will definitely be seeing you guys next time. Take care, everyone, and be sure to subscribe.